the easiest way to describe it without getting too sciencey about it all is think of, your brain as like a ski slope. All right. So, you every time you wake up in the morning, you're going down the ski slope. And eventually, when you're young, it's all fresh snow, and you get to choose the route, and you can go here, there, and everywhere, and you explore here, and you go this way and you don't like it, and so the next time you go this way, and or you fall, and all the things. And as we get older, we kind of get stuck in the tracks of the skis, and we're always sort of going the same way, right? So this could be things like rumination. This is what I'm, when you're talking about people who have depression or anxiety, it's that thought loop in their head that's telling them, like, I'm not safe, or like, this is scary, or this thought, when this thought happens, it just sends me down this spiral and I can't pull myself out of it.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. So it's nice to meet you, Taryn. Thank you so much for saying yes and showing up on the Unveiling the Beast podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and why you think you are who you are?
Oh, that's a loaded question. How long you got?
I have an hour.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. So my name is Taryn, originally born in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I lived in South Africa until I was 13. And then my parents told us we're immigrating to Vancouver, Canada. So at the tender age of 13, when you think that your whole world is that and your friends and all of that. So it was a big move for all of us. And it really opened my eyes at the age of 13 to like how big the world is. So after I finished high school in Canada, I knew I wanted to go traveling. So I did. I went, and it was like going to be one of those gap years for a year and then come back. And I found myself 10 years later going traveling, and having lived in many different parts of the world, I ended up going back to Vancouver. And I like to say I went to the University of Life because I learned a lot about myself, a lot about people in general. And then when I went back to Vancouver, I ended up working for my father, for a family business, which I loved, it was, I suppose, almost 17 years. But I just burnt myself out. I just worked myself to the bone. Your family's business. I loved it until I didn't, and then it was challenging to leave because, well, all the things, right? We worked really well together. It was nothing to do with the family dynamics or anything. It was just not where my heart was, and my heart is really helping people. And I suppose that comes from, like I say, traveling, meeting so many people, having these life experiences. And, you know, the more people I meet, the more I realize like we're not as different as we all think we are, and we're all sort of struggling with the same things. And I went through those struggles myself, and so now I find myself living in Costa Rica. That's
Mm.
the that's the condensed version, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I asked where you are and you said I'm in Costa Rica now, that
Yeah.
explains it.
Right. Yeah. But this has been home now for 2 years, and it will be until it's not. I think of
Mm.
myself like I don't know. I think we all belong to the world, and we get very caught up in like, this is where I'm from, this is where I live, this is, my identity. And I think the more we can allow ourselves to experience new things and places and different cultures, it opens us up to all sorts of things, including, being empathetic and understanding, and realizing, like I say, that we're all not as different as we think we are, even if we speak a different language, right?
Yeah, I love
Mm.
that. So
Mm.
just out of curiosity, is there something that happens inside of you when you're just like, okay, it's time for me to move somewhere else now?
Um, I can't say that it's a immediate thought, or it's more something that sort of naggles and just
Mm.
something calling. I this last move, like I say, I was in Vancouver now for the last 17 years, and we had bought a house, we had a wonderful, uh we were making, wonderful living and lots of friends, and, all the things, the white picket fence, the nice
Yeah.
car, all of it. And I just, like I say, I burnt myself out, but I looked around and I just thought, it's like, is this it for me? Like, is this the rest of my life? Like working Monday to Friday, sometimes on a Saturday. And then just being too exhausted to actually do anything on the weekends. And I thought, I I'm a true believer in, like, I don't want to get to the end of my life and go, oh, I should have done that, I
Mm.
should have done this. Even this move to Costa Rica, it's been challenging for sure. It gets challenging the older you get. And having said that, when the decision comes about, it's always like, well, I always think of like, will I regret doing this more, or will I regret not doing this more? And for me, that's always the gauge. It's like, well, okay, what's the worst thing could happen, right? It's just
Yeah.
stuff. It's just, so you pack up and you go home with your tail between your legs, which I've done many times. And and that's life, that's experience, that's, to me, that's living the full spectrum of it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I
Mm.
was having a conversation with somebody, I want to say Tuesday, and I've moved probably, it's either 21 or 22 times in my entire life,
Wow.
starting from childhood. And I've been where I am now in my house for 7 years, and that's the longest
Wow.
I've ever been in one place.
Wow.
And it's almost uncomfortable. Like I feel like I'm okay, let's go. But like the places around here, just because of how the deal we got when we moved here versus what it's like now in the economy and stuff, we
Mm-hmm.
can't even afford to move. So,
Yeah.
but it's almost like this, yay, I'm finally in one place and I'm not going anywhere. Oh shit, this is
And
really
then,
uncomfortable.
yeah. And it's funny, I read many years ago, I can't even think of the source, but that 7-year mark is significant. Like the 7 years, if you think about farming or there's these cycles that we go through,
Hmm.
and we go through them as let's like a cyclical, a cycle that we all experience. Nature experiences it, and we too as humans get that feeling too. So it doesn't surprise me when you say like the 7 year mark is always it's 7, 14, 21. It's always those types of years where you feel like I need to change something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
But thankfully we can
we're
buy a
okay
new pair of
for now.
shoes and and change that.
Yeah, or a new shirt that you're not sure if you like.
Right, exactly. We don't need to change houses every 7 years, but yeah.
Yeah. So I want to kind of do like a right turn and ask. Well, actually, I have two questions. We'll start with psilocybin.
Mm.
Um, can you tell the listeners a little more about what psilocybin is? And actually, you're my second guest now to talk about it, and I've learned so much. So, um,
Mm.
for the listeners that didn't catch that episode, can you tell them a little bit about what it is, where it comes from, and how you use it to help others achieve health?
Yeah, full spectrum living, I suppose I would say, you know.
Mm,
Yeah, psilocybin basically is the scientific name or the of magic mushrooms, what we all know to be magic mushrooms, right? And so it's a psychedelic, it's a plant medicine, and it grows naturally. It grows everywhere, really. And there's many different species of, well, there's thousands of species of mushrooms, and there's hundreds that contain this compound called psilocybin. And what psilocybin does is it works on the brain receptors, in particular the 5-HT PA receptor, which is like the serotonin receptors, which is the happy hormone, or we
mm,
often associate like serotonin with things like depression or anxiety. And so psilocybin can be very useful in aiding people who are suffering from, especially things like treatment-resistant depression. They've tried everything else, or they're just sick and tired of being on meds, on antidepressants, because really antidepressants, they really just numb you. Yeah, you don't feel sad, but you don't feel anything, right? So a lot of
yeah.
people don't want to live that way. And so they're looking for another way. And not only depression and anxiety, I mean, it helps with focus and productivity. It helps with cognitive abilities, many different use cases. In fact, they're studying this in many different laboratories, and finding tons of use cases that they didn't even know were possible. So it
Mm,
works. The way it works is, the way I like to think of it, or the easiest way to describe it without getting too sciencey about it all, is you think of your brain as like a ski slope. All right, so you every time you wake up in the morning, you're going down the ski slope, and eventually, when you're young, it's all fresh snow, and you get to choose the route, and you can go here, there, and everywhere, and you explore here, and you go this way and you don't like it, and so the next time you go this way, and or you fall, and all the things. And as we get older, we kind of get stuck in the tracks of the skis, and we're always sort of going the same way, right? So this could be things
mm,
like rumination. This is what I'm, when you're talking about people who have depression or anxiety, it's that thought loop in their head that's telling them like, I'm not safe, or like this is scary, or this thought, when this thought happens, it just sends me down this spiral, and I can't pull myself out of it. Like we know that well, We don't always know, but a lot of the times we know that the things that cause us anxiety are probably never going to happen, right? But our body's constantly
Right.
trying to keep us safe. So our brains are wired in a way that is constantly looking for threats. And that's how we've, lasted as a species for as long as we have, which is wonderful. But in this day and age, we don't have the saber-toothed tiger like chasing us. But we're still constantly looking for those threats. And so, nowadays the threat can be somebody cutting you off in traffic. Or not getting your Starbucks order right. And it triggers this stress response, right? In
Yeah.
us, we're so accustomed to it. And with psilocybin, it's like when you take a macro dose, which means basically a large dose of psilocybin, which would be associated with that, hallucinating, you're deep in the experience. It would be like shaking up the snow globe, right? So that the next time you're going down the slope, like everything is fresh. It feels like a weight has been lifted, and like you get to choose which track you go down, right? So,
Mm.
you don't have to, the way I describe it, like for me, and this is we're talking about a macro dose, so a big what they would call like a heroic dose, or you notice it, you're in it, and you're experiencing it. But afterwards there's this weight, this lightness in you, and you get to choose, oh, I don't need to show up like that, or I don't need to flip the bird, every time I get cut off, or I don't need to get annoyed when they mess up my Starbucks order. Like everything is okay, right? And
Mm.
so it is a very powerful tool. We do retreats here in Costa Rica where we do work with people, and it's a therapy. People often like say to me, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, magic mushrooms," or you're out there like tripping, and it's not like that at all. It's been given a bad rap, and sure, there's still people who use it as a party drug, I suppose you would say, and it's still illegal in most states and a lot of the world. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of research going on at the moment that is very, I would say within the next couple of years, it will be used in, Western health for these types of use cases, people with PTSD, extreme trauma, depression, anxiety, so many things, ADHD, the list goes on and on. And then there's also microdosing. So microdosing is when you're taking, and it's a subperceptual amount of psilocybin, so you don't feel it. You're not like tripping. You can you can go about your day-to-day work. You can drive. It's like taking a multivitamin. You're going, and the way I describe this is, instead of getting that, snow globe, like shake it out type of thing, um, you're getting sort of more the, what do you call them? On the ski runs where they have like the man-made snow, and it's like,
Like
letting the
blowing,
snow,
like
yeah, the blowers, right? And it like
yeah.
lets the snow fall on that particular run. And, that run is nice and soft, and then the next one is a bit bumpier. And so microdosing is this opportunity to, the psilocybin works with your neurons. And so as we get older, we don't learn things as fast as we used to, right? I mean, we've all experienced this. Like when you're a kid, kids can learn another language like that. And when you get
Mm.
older, and the older you get, the harder that is. And it's because just with age and the environment we live in, our neurons, our receptors, stop joining. They stop making these new neural pathways. And so that's why we always do that thing when our partner tells us to wash the dishes. That's why we always have that feeling when our mother says something that triggers us, or whatever the response is. We don't have the opportunity to choose a new way. And with microdosing, it connects new neural pathways. So it's a wonderful opportunity to say, like, learn a new skill or a language. It really helps with things like focus, or just day-to-day anxiety, or the depression, in that, like, it just helps you choose a new way of, like, okay, is it as bad as I think it is? Like, I don't, I need to take a step back. And it, for me, the way I describe it is, there's this, it gives you this space between the stimulant and the response. So you
Mm.
have this, this buffer. It's almost like time slows down and you get to choose a new way, right? So instead of always reacting to that thing that your sister says that drives you crazy, like, you have this time between that you can, take a step back and go, like, how do I want to show up? How do I want to respond to this? And it's extremely beneficial. And I do that microdose course online for people as well. So we can do that and work through, because it does bring up emotions. It brings up a lot of things that, might not be pleasant for people. And it really forces you to take a look at, how are you showing up? Like, what is your role in what you're experiencing in life? Like, how are you showing up and contributing to your suffering? And really, until we do that, nothing's going to change. We can't
Right.
control everybody else around us. I've tried. It doesn't work so well. But the only thing we can control is ourselves and our response. And so just in looking after ourselves and our response to other people, people will say to me, like, wow, you've changed so much, or you used to do this, or you used to do that. And oh yeah, I guess I did. It we find it harder to change our thought patterns and our behaviors the older we get. And I feel like microdosing, in particular, psilocybin, can really shift that and help us move towards the life that we want to create.
Mm. I love all of that.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, A, if this is part of your healing story, and B, what is your story?
Ah,
What is what's your story behind all of
yeah.
this?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
And my
asking.
right eye keeps watering. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
I'm
that's
not crying.
okay.
I'm like,
Yeah.
psilocybin.
Yeah, it does bring up a lot of emotions. So,
Okay, I'm good.
yeah, so my story, I mean, how I came to this work, I was, that kid in high school who would try anything, and I dabbled. I certainly didn't have, now knowing, what I know now, looking back, had a psilocybin experience by any means. And that was that. That was high school and done with it. Uh, Fast forward many years, and my partner suffers very chronic pain, and has done for many, many years. And she suffers with trigeminal neuralgia, which is a nerve pain in the side of her face, fibromyalgia, and everything that comes along with it, depression, anxiety, all the things. And really, I started looking into ways to help her. And so everything from, from breath work to yoga to, standing on your head for 6 hours, whatever, like, and I, kind of went down this rabbit hole. And it was a few years ago, and so there was a lot thing at that time. Michael Pollan had just come out with his book, How to Change Your Mind, which is a wonderful book if anybody's interested. It's not only about psilocybin, but it's psychedelics in general, and it's wonderful. It's brilliantly written and a lot of information, and he's a fantastic writer. And so I kind of went down that rabbit hole. I read everything I could. I researched everything I could, and I found a lot of studies with a company or a place called Cluster Busters, and they deal with people with cluster headaches. Now, cluster
Mm.
headaches are one of the most atrocious, painful experiences that somebody can have. And it's fascinating because it's somewhat like, often when you're researching something like trigeminal neuralgia, cluster headaches will come up too. And I don't really know, why the correlation, because they're different, but the pain of it is so severe that, I mean, people, there's nothing that can help them. There's no medication, there's no cure, and it's just like debilitating pain
Mm.
constantly. Cluster headaches, you kind of go through these, same with trigeminal neuralgia, you'll go through these flare-ups or episodes, I would say. And so I came across cluster busters, and they were doing a bunch of research with psilocybin and this chronic pain. And they'd had tremendous results. If you or your listeners want to go look them up, they're fabulous resource for people to find out more about that too. And if anybody who suffers with cluster headaches, or go check them out. They're a wonderful place for resources and help. And I found out that they were doing these studies with psilocybin, and I mean, these people were having, 1 to 3 doses of psilocybin and being completely healed. Like, not even,
Mm.
not even like less symptoms, but like just like no episodes. And I was like, this is amazing, like this is fascinating. So I, wanted to know, there's very little about trigeminal neuralgia out there. And so, not knowing anything and not wanting just to, I just said to my now wife, I said, like, there's this thing, and like, if you want to do some magic mushrooms. And she looked at me like I'm crazy.
Amen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, like, yeah, this it's not us, and it's certainly not her, right? So, but we were coming to Costa Rica for a holiday. We actually had been here before, and we fell in love with the place, and so we were coming for an extended amount of time to see if it would be somewhere we would relocate. And so I looked, and it just happened to find a lady called Jackie Reese with Embracing Your Light. And we did a retreat with her. And we have since become very good friends with Jackie. And now Jackie and I host retreats together here in Costa Rica. But we wanted, not knowing much about, knowing as much as you can on the internet, and also like delving into it head first by yourself is probably not a good idea. We wanted
Yeah.
to find somebody who was an expert, who dealt with cases like this, or, you know, trauma, um, you know, that wasn't like just this, yeah, hippie in a tent and be like, yeah, come, let's do some mushrooms, and you can do that by yourself. So we found Jackie and we just hit it off with her, and we came to Costa Rica and we did a retreat with her, and it was the most magical, difficult, beautiful experience of my life. I did it with, I collect my partner was like, I don't want to do it by myself. So I was like, I'll do some magic mushrooms, like, not realizing how much stuff I had, just being a caregiver at that time, working, 60, 80 hours a week. I didn't even know how much healing I needed.
Mm.
And it kind of chokes me up because like it just opened me up. Like it really just cracked me up to the possibility of, letting go of that need to control, the need to fix everything, or people pleasing, or all the things that I was going through and not even realizing it. My partner suffered extreme anxiety to the point that like she wouldn't go out. There was a couple of years where she just kind of locked herself in the house almost, and very
Mm.
socially like very anxious. And we did the journey with Jackie, and we carried on our trip, and we were sort of halfway through our trip, and I was like, she's acting really different, and I was like, oh, this is so. And I remember being out one night, and I went to the bar to get a couple of drinks, and I came back. And we'd met a group of people, and we were chatting at the table. And I sat down, and, and I started chatting to somebody next to me, and they were like, oh, like, who are you? And I was like, oh, and I'm an outgoing person, and I'm, the person who's like the life and soul of the party. And they were just like, oh, we haven't even noticed you here all night. And I was like, and I thought to myself, yeah, that's true, because I haven't got a word in, because my wife is just talking like to all of these strangers. And after we went home, I said, do you notice anything like different about you? And she said, well, like, what do you mean? And I didn't want to like say it, because I didn't want her to be like, oh, I should like not, or, hold
Right.
myself back, or, oh, that's not okay. Or, so I waited a few days, and I said, like, do you notice that you've, been far more outgoing? And she was like, huh, yeah, totally. I said, yeah, how's that your anxiety? And she said, no, yeah, I haven't even, like, until you brought it up, hasn't been an issue at all. And that to me was like, okay, it didn't, help or cure her pain, physical pain, but that in of itself was a game changer, because it meant being able to, be with friends, family, community, get the support, being able to reach out to people, and also just enjoy life, pain and
Yeah.
all, without, having to hold herself back and be so worried all the time about what other people think. And so I was, if and for me too, it just opened the doors to. I went back. I spoke to my family. I said, like, I'm sorry, but I have to do this move, that's leaving the company, moving, like, for myself, for my own healing. And I started just seeing life and things, and my reaction and my participation in it all so differently and really finding like agency. Like instead of like looking around and going, well, that's just the way it is, like there's
Yeah.
nothing I can do about it. And so I went back and I was like, okay, I'm hooked. And so I just have been down that psilocybin rabbit hole for a few years now. And then, I reached out to Jackie, who we did the retreat with, and we were moving to Costa Rica anyway. If you ever need help with any retreats, and so we did. We volunteered, uh, because we felt it was so profound for us that we felt like I have to help people experience this. And at the time it was like, how do I do this, right? So it was like,
Yeah.
if we can help at a retreat, and since doing that has been the breakthroughs, and it's just every time we do one, it just blows my mind. We always say we want to take a picture of people when they walk in the door, and then a picture of them when they walk out the door, because they look
Mm.
like 10 pounds lighter. But we also realize that it might be kind of weird as soon as they walk in to be like, can I get a picture of you?
Smile.
Right.
Yeah.
But by the end of the retreat, oh, they're all smiles and wanting pictures, and there have been some amazing, profound breakthroughs that I've witnessed firsthand and continue to. And it just speaks volumes to what this little plant that grows naturally, in nature can do
Yeah.
for us. It's almost like God saying, here you go, here's some natural pharmaceutical. There's no need for these. And I'm not saying there's not a place for, Western medicine, for sure.
Right.
I'm all over that. But I think that often in our society, like these days, we all want that quick fix, right? We just want to take a pill and be done with it and feel better. And when, psilocybin, it might sound, when I'm talking about this, that, oh, well, you're talking about it like it's a quick fix, or, it's certainly not one size fits all, or a magic pill, so to speak. But it opens you up to things that you need to be opened up to. We always say, like, the medicine will give you exactly what you need. And so if that's a bit of a kick in the pants, then that's what you'll get, right? It's not always
Yeah.
easy, because it's really, when we're doing it, people are lying down, and it's eye mask, and it's music, and it's you with you. And so that's with none of the defenses, right? With none of the ego, with none of the names or the labels we put on ourselves. And so that can be scary, right? It's like, okay, now, and
Yeah.
there's always like insights and wisdom in that experience that we just can't tap into in our conscious minds, right?
Yeah. Something that stuck out for me, and it's been repeating in my head since you said it, is for you, it showed you how much healing you actually needed. And my question would be, well, what I'm hearing is like the psilocybin kind of takes you inside of yourself. Is that right? And
Absolutely.
so my question for you, and I know it's probably different for everybody, but for you, was it like you standing outside of yourself looking in, or was it like somebody else standing outside and looking inside and showing it to you?
Yeah, no, the exactly what you said. The first, was like me looking at me and how I'm showing up. And like it gives me chills just talking about it, because that's what I mean. Like, it's not always easy to look at that, right? How we're showing up. showing up for
Yeah.
ourselves too, and how we're letting ourselves down. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's this moment, and as you pointed out, everybody's different, and every journey is different, every session is different. But yeah, that first one was, especially for me, was like, okay, you say, you're burnt out, or you're overworked, or you're doing too much, or you're so tired, but how are you contributing to this? And not in a shameful, guilty way, but in a way with just pure love, grace, and compassion. Like,
Yeah.
almost like taking your inner child and just holding her, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then afterwards, it's like, okay, you've got these messages, whatever they are for you, and then it's, now what? And that's where the work starts too, right? So when we do these
Yeah.
retreats here, and often will people who are like in a severe depressive state, or have a serious trauma, or something, they're going through something, they will opt to do the macro dose, or come to a retreat. And then we work with them afterwards, because the integration part is, I would say, just as important, if not more, because now you've got all this information. Now what, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love too how it you didn't use these words, but it kind of helps you take personal responsibility for your life.
Absolutely.
Not saying that everything that happens to us is our own fault, but one of the things that my coach does with me a lot is, like, I'll be like, I'm so overwhelmed. How are you overwhelming yourself? I'm so
Mm-hmm.
exhausted. How are you exhausting yourself? And when you flip it that way, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And like you said, I mean, it's not psilocybin, but it opens it up for
Oh, totally.
conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that reframe, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're so right. Like, sure, like, some people have gone through horrific things in their life, and a lot of it is not their fault, and it's, and nobody's saying that it is, but it's also like, okay, and I get to choose. I get to show up. Like, I get to use this, and take it and run with it, or transform it, or I get to wallow in it, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, we've all been there, right? Myself included. I still find myself feeling, sorry for myself, and that's okay. Those feelings are valid, and they should be welcomed. And one more thing, about the psilocybin, is that feeling, I don't know about you, but like, when I grew up, it was, I don't want to say frowned upon, but it was challenging to express your emotions, because, and I get it. I don't have children, but I understand, like, parents want their kids to, they don't want to see their child sad, or angry, or unhappy, or, so it's like, oh, it's okay. Like, don't worry. Like, let's go and get ice cream. And so as
Yeah.
we don't really learn how to, like, feel our emotions, and we have this weird thing in the, like, world that we live in today, that there's, like, good emotions and bad emotions, right? Like, and we're all
Right.
after these, like, good emotions, and it's like, oh, but, like, that's life. Like, I want to experience it all, right? And so, like, how can I, yeah, have those moments of, oh, woe is me, and I am feeling overwhelmed, and, and the world is all against me today, and all those things, and can I move through it? can I move through it
Yeah.
quickly, right? Like, I can feel those things, and that's okay. We're all human. And it's not to say like, oh, everything's fine, all the time.
Yeah.
But it's also like, okay, I can, and I found that to be very helpful for myself, like with microdosing especially. I can feel it and be in it and give myself that moment, that grace, that compassion, and then go, okay, now what? I get to choose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a superpower, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to the emotion thing and just letting ourselves feel it. With all my training, like I suddenly am so paranoid of fucking up my child because he's 7
Uh-huh.
and he's very emotional and because he's like me.
Right.
And one thing my coach always says is like one way or another we're gonna fuck up our kids. All we can do is offer to pay for their therapy. But one thing I do with my son, like instead of like if he's frustrated about something, instead of saying, "Oh, honey, you're gonna be okay," I'm like, "Yeah, it sucks, huh? It really
Mm,
sucks." Yeah.
yeah.
And then I let him just feel it,
Yeah.
even though it's uncomfortable for me because I want him to always be happy. But then again, as a fellow human, I know that that's just not like we have emotions, we're humans. And to not let him feel those things is just going to be a whole other story when he's a grown up.
Well, exactly. And I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, kudos to you because yeah, that's not easy, right? To watch your child being frustrated or angry or sad or upset. And I think that a lot of this anger in the world today is because a lot of us, myself included, like never got the tools like on how to deal with those emotions. And so when emotions aren't expressed, they get bottled up, and then that little 7-year-old turns into, a 17-year-old and then a 27-year-old and maybe, in business one day and takes it out on his employees or, all of the things that, and so if we can teach our kids and like I say, like, that's not an easy thing to do, but I think we could all learn a lot from just being with our emotions, and it's not easy and it's uncomfortable and
Yeah.
nobody, myself included, I don't like to be in that state at all. And I do recognize that in a few minutes it'll be gone, and the next roller coaster of emotion will show up. Yeah.
Well, I have one more question for you.
Mm.
And I ask everyone at the end of every episode, and that is if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
Ooh, just one.
You can do multiple, but like what's one that really stands out for you?
I think the thing that comes to mind for me is like there's no one size fits all. And especially when we're talking about, healing or transformation and, you know, a lot of people, oh, their friend, did talk therapy, so I'm going to do talk therapy or whatever the modality is. And I would say to people to find the thing or the things that resonate with you, and that and it's trial and error, and don't be afraid to, do the thing, go to the yoga class, do the somatic breath work, do the, and see how it feels with you. And also the other thing I'd say is, yeah, it's never too late. It's never too late to change your life, change your mind, change the complete trajectory of, your life and those around you. I think we get stuck in this loop of just ticking off the boxes.
Mm.
And then we get to a certain stage in our life where we're like, oh, I think I've been checking off the wrong boxes. And a lot of us just get stuck there because it's scary and it's uncomfortable to move or to change. And I'd say it's never too late. We can all learn something new, learn a new way of being for ourselves and for others.
Beautiful beasts, Taryn Swanepoel signing off. Until next time.